Please join me in welcoming the filmmakers of Nuremberg, starting with sound designer Michael Babcock, editor Tom Eagles, composer Brian Tyler, writer and director James Vanderbilt, and actor Michael Shannon. So, James, as I understand it, you've been working on this in one form or another for 13 years. So take me back to the starting point. What got you interested in this, and what kept you tenacious enough to stick with it over all that time?
It began with a book proposal by a guy named Jack L. High. It was only 5 or 6 pages long, and it was the fastest I'd ever said yes to anything in my life, because it was just, the story of Kelly and Goering and how they met, and how they were both trying to manipulate each other, and then how they both ended up. I just went, oh God, that's such an amazing way into, discussing the nature of evil and sort of plumbing that. And I just really was desperate to tell that story. And then it grew and grew and grew, because, the book proposal and the book itself, I was lucky enough to be getting pages from Jack as he wrote the book. So I was working on the screenplay, he was working on the book, and the book was just about them, and I was doing research, and then I learned about Robert Jackson, and who wasn't really in the book, and I went, I thought my movie was over here, but my movie's actually also over here. And then I read about how he treats Leo Woodall's character, the translator, and I went, and my movie's also over here. So it just kind of kept expanding. As a screenplay, which is terrifying as a writer, and I loved it. And it took a long time to sort of get the first draft into sort of fighting shape. And it's an independent film, so it money came in, money came out. There was many times I thought we were about to go make it, and then we weren't. But ultimately, it came together.
Well, one of the things I loved about the movie was the way the point of view just kind of kept spreading out. And, because I think a lot of people would have thought, oh, well, I've got enough here just with the psychiatrist and Goring. That can be the movie. And then you kind of keep bringing these new points of view. And I'm wondering, Tom, for you as an editor, how complicated this movie was, because I feel like throughout the movie, the emphasis could shift completely depending on whose point of view you decide to favor more or less. And I'm wondering how much you guys found yourselves playing with that in the editing room.
Yeah, a lot. I mean, it was a hugely complex script, and it's a lot of balls to keep in the air. I mean, the backbone for me emotionally was that kind of Kelly-Goering relationship, and then Kelly's relationship with Jackson and how those things crossed over. But you have to keep all of those balls in the air, because even come the final, cross-examination, it's Richard E. Grant's character who kind of saves the day. Yeah. So, I mean, that was the subject of conversation all the way through the edit. Is it a single protagonist? Is it dual protagonist? Is it 8 protagonists? What is it? It's
well, and you mentioned, so what kind of research were you doing outside of the book? You mentioned that you were researching, finding out things about Robert Jackson and all of these other people. I mean, to me, this seems like the kind of thing where the research could be endless if you let it be.
It was, 13 years, so it was pretty endless. It just, there's so much.
13 years a slave.
Yeah, that's right. But the thing about it too is, which was wonderful, and one of the things that drew me to it is it was a trial that was built to be documented and recorded. And as we show in the film too, they rebuilt that courtroom to put cameras in and recording devices, and to make sure that all of this was, you can go on YouTube and watch pretty much the entire trial, which took a year. Yeah. So there was just, I think, so much material to go through, and there were so many great stories that we, could make a whole other film or set of films. How they made the films that they showed in the courtroom, and how John Ford went over there and recruited, the Schulbergs and other filmmakers. So it just, there was no limit, I think, to and I'm a fairly obsessive person, because I write about obsessive people. So I definitely went pretty far down the rabbit hole with this.
And Michael, how much did you know going into this about Robert Jackson, and what kind of research did you have to do?
Oh no, I didn't know. I hadn't heard of him. I was not much of a history student in school, but it's one of the things I love about acting is that it like adds water and oxygen to these stories that when I was a kid, I could kind of care less about. But when you're actually trying to inhabit a world and a time and a story and a person, then you get there's a dimensionality to it that you just never get in school. So yeah, it was a big, it was a lot of research for me. But fortunately, it's quite easy to find out a lot about Robert Jackson if you care to. I mean, there's a website devoted to his legacy and his work, and I highly recommend looking at that. He's been written about a great deal. He was even recently quoted in an op-ed piece in the New York Times. I went to visit my mom in Kentucky, and she said, "Oh, I want to read you this," and it was a beautiful quote from him. I can't really repeat it verbatim right now, but yeah, I think his influence is pretty vast. So I'm quite honored that I got to play him, and I'm happy I got to meet him in my fashion.
Yeah, well, as a fan of yours, I really enjoyed seeing you in the kind of Gary Cooper, James Stewart kind of role, which is, I feel like, not the type of thing that people ordinarily cast you in. And
yeah, it was a real blindside. In the same period, I mean, I went to Budapest for 6 months and played a Supreme Court justice and a president. So that was kind of a surreal experience. Not either of which I would have ever anticipated being asked to play, but I was very touched when Jamie reached out to me about doing it, and it made me feel seen.
what made you think of Michael, aside just from the fact that he's a great actor?
I mean, he's not aside from the fact he's a great actor. He's a great actor, and I think that he just has this amazing quality about him that is wonderful. I'm going to say nice things about you in front of you, so please don't panic. He's so good at being a chameleon. He's played so many different sort of parts that way, but I think there is an honesty and a genuineness to him and a stoicism to him that I felt that Jackson had too. This is just a man who's trying to do the right thing, and I really loved Michael's work and really wanted. I felt that he would be brilliant in the part, and I think he is.
Yeah. Thanks, Jim.
Brian, one of the things that really impressed me about the music in this movie is I feel like you thread this pretty tricky needle, which is the subject matter is very solemn, obviously, and grave, and yet there is also this kind of inspirational, heroic aspect to the movie, and you have to sort of capture both of those sides with your music. Talk a little bit about coming into this, what you saw as the guiding principles for the score.
Yeah, so when I was composing the score, I realized that this movie felt different than a lot of the other films about the Holocaust, where when you're in World War II and there's so much loss, it's so devastating that you would be remiss to not have it be dark, and so I think there's a melancholy to it, there's a nod to that, but this is the time when we're standing up. We're the good guys, right? Let's fight back. So there's one of the themes is called the hope theme. What I wanted to do also is not make the score feel black and white. I do not want the Holocaust to seem like it's further away than it really is. And so the music, albeit orchestral, harmonically and kind of how I wrote it is kind of modern. It feels like it was yesterday because it was yesterday. And the idea that this can repeat is obvious in the headlines today. And so that immediacy, I wanted to feel like you're watching this film and almost forget, like, dang, you know, it's just, the way it's done is so immediate. I needed to find what you were saying, though. And with Jamie, we've worked together for 21 years,
Yeah.
and done so many films together, but this is different in the sense that I tried to start writing music right where the movie begins. Which I read the Jack Alhigh book, strangely enough, one of my orchestrators, Robert L. High, if they're related, and it's just a coincidence. What I did is I started the music, I had to start in 1933. And I wrote music kind of as an entire suite, part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, Nuremberg trials, part 5, what happened since. And I needed that context in order to even know. It's like writing a character in a screenplay. You don't just have them appear in a scene in a kitchen. You have to, even if you don't hear that other material, it's kind of like writing it as a, kind of placing it in a musical history that existed. So that I could see the arc much more easily that way, that we got hit hard, the Holocaust and what happened to all the Jews in Europe, and from, you know, Warsaw to the camps, and then the trial. Can we get back? Can we stand up? And I say we, you know, as those who really want to stand up for what is right, and this is a right and wrong situation, no question. There's no controversy to this in my mind. So the music had to have that journey, and by the time we get to the story, there's a whole other side of music that connects to themes, including the gallows. Yeah. So when he's walking towards getting hanged, that scene, you hear these 3 chords on these bells, which are at Auschwitz and the camps, they would play on speakers these dissonant chords at times of mealtime, going to time to sleep, lights out, all those things, but they're dehumanizing. They were intentionally dissonant, and we took those scales and put them into those scenes as if he's walking towards his own, you know, imprisonment, in a sense, the end. And all of those things wouldn't be there unless I went back and started from, and it's a kind of a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to do that. And you know, when I saw it in the theater for the first time last night, I mean, it just brought me to tears, you know, thinking that I could be involved in something like this, you know. It's really an honor. Thank you. Anyway, yeah.
I just want to say that Brian called me and said, I wrote a 3-hour suite for the movie. I said, the movie's not 3 hours. And he said, no, I had to, I'll explain it to you. But yeah, it was incredible.
Yeah, thank you. And so actually, like, that's part of what what you can hear. It's going to be out with it, but the context of it, especially in the fact that I really hope people go back when they see this movie now, and it kind of, you gain an interest in it that can actually move the needle today. And that's the most you can. We're in the entertainment industry, but boy, when it can cross over with reality and move the needle a little bit, it's an added responsibility.
Well, watching it, and I've seen the movie before, but watching it again today in this, like, the great sound system in this place, like, I really appreciated the kind of integration of your score, the sound design, how they work together with the performances. Like, for example, Michael, there's this great scene in the movie between Michael and Rami, like, at the stadium, and you're doing all kinds of sort of subtle things that I noticed today with the sound design that don't, like, I didn't notice the first time because I was kind of caught up in what they were saying, but then watching it today, I'm like, oh, he's doing all kinds of things here to sort of enhance the mood and elevate the tension. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about both that scene and just in general, how you see your role in terms of aiding the performances and showcasing them without getting in the way of them.
That absolutely nails so many things. And actually, I also mixed it. Also, I mixed the music and mixed the dialogue and sound effect stuff. And I love that. I love so many scenes, but that scene in the stadium is a great example. And you just nailed a bunch of things that was a huge challenge as far as staying out of the way of those performances, but being additive in a way that's, you're going with mood. I'd love to listen to your answer because we're both dealing with how do you add to a mood without getting caught.
Yeah.
It's and there's no hiding, and that scene in particular, I love the message of that scene. So it's really picking that environment and moving that environment without distracting it. Even down, and actually that goes with many of the scenes, even picking simple things like reverbs in the courtroom. It has a real personality. It has a real character to it. And kind of like skipping a little bit with one thing I was really concerned about. I'll admit this now. Great place to do it, I guess.
Well, I'm excited.
One of the things I was worried about is it's not wall-to-wall music, so it's exposed. And then how do you get from the fact that you're so locked in the performance, you're so locked in the story, and then getting it, doing the magic trick of not realizing, and actually I'm sitting next to a person that's really responsible for making that work. You're dealing with all kinds of different tones, you're dealing with the way it flows. So the fact that you don't hear a music cue come in. You're actually absolutely feeling it.
Sneaks in.
Yeah.
There's something with the sound actually that we kind of was interesting that I think Kieran, it's his last moments and he's looking at a photo, and what he did. So I played an innocent kind of concerto. That's a theme that recurs. And it's usually not for him, but in this case, it was saying. And he reverberated it in a way that seemed like a memory. It was saying in his mind, no, he knows this is the end. I'm a good person. Look what I'm looking at in his own mind. Yet there's this tension note sound that is going over this lullaby that is saying, no, you're not. And even in his last moments, we kind of said it with the music and the sound combined to say, I am trying to tell myself it's all good, I'm good. But the reality of the camps and that chord that is the chord that I was talking about that they would play is lurking in the background. To say, even in his last moments, he couldn't escape justice. Was in my mind, I hope that's what it was.
Well, and Tom, Michael brought up the courtroom stuff, and I was thinking again, watching it today, like that's the kind of thing that, for an audience member, we sit and it just kind of washes over us. But I was just thinking the number of ways you could cut that stuff, it's infinite. I mean, you have so many people in the courtroom, you have so many reactions, just like so much about those scenes are the reactions. And again, I feel like where do you even begin approaching something like that, and what kinds of factors sort of guide your choices in terms of deciding this is who I want to be on for this moment?
I mean, yeah, it was overwhelming to begin with. Those takes in the courtroom were 25-minute takes. Like these guys just rolled the entire scene. For me, it was like watching theatre. So Michael would get up and do his. When he got up and did his opening speech, all the extras in the courtroom started applauding at the end of that take because it really was like watching theatre. And he would do it, and then he would do it another 18 times.
Micah.
Sorry, you guys hear me?
Sorry, director. I'm sorry. Project.
And so, and we were covering it with 4 cameras, so you had this immense body of material. So, yeah, I mean, how do you decide who to be on at any point in time? I think one of the big challenges for us was to keep Kelly connected to that courtroom scene because that's the culmination of all the work that he's done. But that he's not the protagonist of that scene. And so we used him strategically. We used Howie strategically. I think when Kieran was kind of glibly reading through the statement of all the stuff he's done to Howie's relatives. So we had all of those options because we had so much material. We had literally everyone, and quite often we had them at the moment that they were hearing them. You know, so if you think about the scene where we show the concentration camps film, they're actually, those takes are, you know, that's 4 cameras watching all those people witness that maybe for the first time. I don't know if they were familiar with those images, but there certainly wasn't a whole lot of preamble, right?
No, I mean, that was just to build off that. That was one of the things when we started pre-production on the film. I sort of asked, you know, the actors, you know, this material is out there. The films that are shown in the courtroom are out there. Do me a favor, don't watch them in your preparation, because I would love to try and capture that emotion on the day. And so we, you know, set up 4 cameras in the courtroom. I went in and explained, because there's also 300 extras sitting there who, you know, don't necessarily know what we're shooting, and you don't want to spring that on anyone. And so I sort of explained, this is what we're doing, and this is what you're going to be seeing, and it's going to be really tough stuff. But you know, I want everybody to be ready. And then we had a moment of silence, and then we showed the films, which are all the real footage. I didn't shoot anything for that. That is all the actual footage, and I rolled on every one of you for the entire run of what we showed, and it was you know, it was the hardest. I think it was the hardest day on the film, but it was, I think the emotions that came off of you guys. You know,
Did you notice that so we were at the Men's Chinese last night, and I could not help but notice, looking around with who was in the row, and the mirror image to what is going on in the scene and in the theater.
Yeah.
It was this very surreal moment where I don't remember scoring a film or working on anything, that the line between movie and where you're sitting is completely evaporated. And it hit me really hard, and it did everyone I was. Yeah, because it's just, man, yeah, very powerful.
Michael, for you as an actor, like, what are the pleasures and what are the challenges of shooting the courtroom stuff that way, where you are doing it in 25-minute takes with 4 cameras? I mean, I would think that on some level that must be very appealing, but I'm also thinking you've got to deliver all of these very lengthy legal arguments and things like that.
Yeah, that's not my wheelhouse, really. I've never tried a case before. And I've always,
until now.
Yeah, I've always found courtroom drama kind of a paradox, because I know we're like junkies for it, but anytime I've ever been in a courtroom, which is several, no, I'm kidding, I've been bored to tears. It's not, we create this thing in the entertainment industry that is not, or for example, I mean, frankly, you know, watching the actual trial and watching Jackson, and he's beautiful, he's got a beautiful mind and beautiful rhetoric, he can speak so eloquently, but it doesn't set you on fire, you know, when you're watching it. It's hard to watch it too long, for me anyway, I don't know. So I guess part of the challenge is, because there's a lot of pretty technical stuff in his argument, and finding that balance between his vehemence to win this fight, but also, you know, if you're a lawyer in front of an international tribunal, you can't just go batshit. You know, you're a professional, and I think that's one of the things I appreciate about the final product that Jamie and Tom and everybody put together, is I feel like you get that sense of him really trying to hold it together, and I find it very compelling. But yeah, but I managed to memorize that. You know, memorizing all those acts and I think we didn't even there's not all of them in the movie, which
No, I think there's one we.
yeah, but that took a while. When I'm spitting off all those things, like, so you did this, you did this, you did this. That took a while because I knew I wanted to be able to just spit it out. Like I didn't want to be looking for it, so it took a few days. Yeah.
It was, but we just to say we did shoot it in one day, about 22 pages, and it was Michael and Russell who said, because it was boarded for I think 3 days, and then Richard's piece was 4th day, and they said we don't want to do a third of this and then come back the next day, and so they were like, no, we want to do it in one, and our first AD had a heart attack basically, but they were amazing and word perfect with all of the acts and everything else. It was really incredible. And the other thing I want to say about that scene, just one of the challenges of it, I think, too, is most courtroom dramas, the lawyer can move. You know, Tom Cruise walks around and kind of, Law and Order, it's kind of, but the way that courtroom was set up because of the mics is that Michael had to stay at that lectern the entire time. So it's just two guys, and you guys were about 50 feet away from each other. I mean, it wasn't, you're not close.
It feels closer in the film
Yeah.
than we actually were.
But that was how the courtroom was really laid out, and we built the courtroom to scale.
Well, I know we're almost out of time, but I just wanted to finish by asking about the performances, because the performances of this movie are all fantastic, and I know obviously some of that just comes down to casting, but what kind of environment do you try to create on set to help facilitate those performances, and is it different on a movie like this where you are dealing with something that's real and so solemn, or does that make you have to sort of try to make the set a little bit lighter, you know what I mean? Like, what's the environment like?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a different environment. I try and create an environment where, the actors are able to come in, and you can completely contradict me when I'm done with this answer. I try, maybe don't succeed, but where they can come and play. That's why it's called a play, is you're coming and playing and you're trying things, and I want them to be able to take swings, take risks, take chances, I've written the screenplay, so I know in my head what I think it might be, but I always sort of feel like that should be the baseline, and, you hire actors because of their talent, because of their instincts, because of what they see in the material that you don't. And so I try and just let them play with each other, and then if I feel like it's going a little to the right and I want to go a little left, and maybe I sort of suggest going a little bit this way, but I just, I used to run around when I was 8 years old with a video camera and my friends and try and make stuff, and I feel like and I did high school theater, and I feel like the more you can keep that vibe to things, even though there's a lot of money and a lot of people on the set and a lot of time, and people are, the better the result is. And when you have someone like Michael Shannon who's there and doing the work and invested in learning all of this stuff, you want to let it rip. So that's the type of environment I try to cultivate.
Yes, I think you were extraordinarily generous and gracious with us, considering, 13 years is nothing to sneeze at, and I always marvel at that. I've worked with a couple other directors, I did this Josh Oppenheimer movie, The End, and he spent like a decade developing that, and to spend a significant portion of your life, and to be so open-minded and not saying, no, please, I've been imagining it like this for 7 years. Just do it like this, It's extraordinary that you're able to do that. But it wasn't like anything goes, and I think that's very effective, actually, because when you did say something, I knew, I was like, oh, that's coming from a very deep place. actually saying, maybe consider this. It must be like from the hot magma of your core, just bubbling out. You know? So I was like, okay, yeah, I'll think about that. Yeah.
Well, I thought it was a really terrific movie, and I appreciate all of you taking the time to come out and talk with me about it. So thank you for doing this. And
Thank you all. Appreciate it.